Hi guys, it's Angie with Fun Endeavors Tie-Dye Lab. Today let's make some marbled socks. I'm using a couple of different kinds of Nike socks. The shorter Nike socks say that they're 71% cotton, 27% polyester, 1% spandex, and 1% nylon. The longer Nike socks say that they are 67% cotton, 30% polyester, 2% spandex, and 1% nylon. So it looks like the shorter socks are just a little bit more cotton than the longer ones, but not by much. The cotton content is high enough in both of these kinds of socks that they ought to dye up nicely. To start, I'm using 2 of the plastic dish pans, which I purchased at the Dollar Tree dollar store, and some Gillette shaving cream. It doesn't really matter what brand shaving cream you use, I'm just using what I could find that was pretty cheap. I'm going to use a dish pan for each individual sock. Right now I'm just going to add some of the shaving cream to each one of the dish pans. This is the first time I've ever done the marbling technique using shaving cream, so I'm just starting out this way and we'll see where it goes. I have a whole bunch of small amounts of dye from where I just made up some color swatches. So I'm going to use this liquid dye for the socks. I'm starting by drizzling some blue Provinca from Dye Spin over the top of the shaving cream. I'm also going to add some Aster from Pro Chemical and Dye, Chantilly Pink, and Wild Chicory, which are both Dye Spin colors. I didn't thin out this shaving cream at all. This is just exactly the way it came out of the can. Like I said, this is the first pair of socks that I did. I did go ahead and thin out the shaving cream a little bit from here on out. So you can kind of use this pair as a reference for the rest of the socks if you want to. Then I'm taking one of my stainless steel lab spoons, and this one has a spatula on the end of it. It's kind of a pointed spatula, but it has a spatula, and that's what I'm using to swirl the dye into the shaving cream. By the way, if you want more white left on things, just don't add as much dye to the top. I'm going to press a pair of the short socks down into each one of the containers. You really need to press the fabric down into there because if the fabric doesn't actually get pressed down into the dye, that area is going to be white. Sometimes it's a little hard to tell because the shaving cream is white and it kind of looked like I had a lot of white left on the socks, but I really didn't. It was just the shaving cream that I was seeing. Then I'm going to pick the socks up and flip them over and do the other side. Technically, I could go ahead and just leave the socks in these containers and let them process like this, but instead I went ahead and pulled them out of the container and put them down inside of another plastic container that had a wire rack down in the bottom, put the lid on the container, and just left them to process for 24 hours. I wanted to go ahead and reuse my containers to make more socks, so I didn't want to just leave them in here. By the way, you'll want to have some wet rags or something available because this process can be a little bit messy. Okay, so I'm getting ready to do the second pair of socks, and I did these back to back. So as soon as I finished rinsing out these containers, I came back, added some more shaving cream, and this time I got some warm water and diluted down the shaving cream a little bit. It just makes it a little creamier and makes it a little easier to smush the socks or the fabric down into the shaving cream. So the last batch of socks didn't even take a full entire can of shaving cream. Of course, I didn't put it really deep because the socks aren't really thick. I added some of the water and then stirred it around with one of my stainless steel lab spoons. I didn't add a whole lot of water, just a little bit. And then I kind of smoothed out the shaving cream so that it wasn't quite as bumpy as the last batch. You can keep adding water until it's the consistency that you want. Mine was about the consistency of either meringue or of Cool Whip. So for this pair of socks, I'm using teal green from Dye Spin, woodland from Dye Spin, teal blue from Dye Spin, and spring green from Pro Chemical and Dye. I'm going to do the same exact process that I did on the other pair of socks. So I waited a couple of days and rinsed the ones that I just made out. And after I saw the way they looked, I decided to try another batch. This time I'm going to do a pair of the longer socks. I'm doing the same exact process, but on the longer socks, I'm going to use blueberry from Pro Chemical and Dye, ice dye blue from Dye Spin, and turkey red from Pro Chemical. These are a little too long to lay totally flat in the container, so I'm going to have to curve them around inside this container. Then when I lift them up to do the back side, I'm going to have to do it in sections. Because of the design, you won't be able to tell that it wasn't one long piece, so it's not going to look bad. Do you notice how the socks or the fabric on the socks is lifting the dye up off of the top of the shaving cream? So this is the reason why I have two separate containers. You can't just put a pair of socks in where you just stuck a pair of socks because there's not any dye left on top. I guess in theory, since I do have some shaving cream left, I could use the same container and just add more dye and marble it, but I'm choosing to do it this way so that I can do both socks at the same time. I would think too, if I reuse the shaving cream, since it does have a little bit of dye left in it, that depending upon the colors that I used, it could definitely get muddy and the colors wouldn't be as distinct. Okay, so I'm going to do one more pair of socks and I'm going to speed through this one because you guys kind of get the gist of what I'm doing. On this pair, I'm going to use bubblegum and key lime from Pro Chemical and Dye, and Bluebird from Dharma. One thing I forgot to mention about this technique that's kind of nice is because the dye is over the top of the shaving cream, you can mix dye colors that normally would form brown. And because they're swirling together and not actually totally mixing together, they don't seem to form brown on the socks or whatever you're using this method on. I mean, if you really stirred it together, they would, but doing what I'm doing, they don't. So I rinsed the socks the same way I rinse all my tie-dye. I started rinsing in cold water, and there's going to be a residue on top of the socks. That residue is the shaving cream. I rinsed most of the residue off the top, warmed the water up to hot, and continued rinsing until the water was running almost clear. There doesn't seem to be a whole lot of excess dye coming out of any of these socks that I did. Do you see all the residue on this pair of socks? I was a little concerned that they were really, really light until I started washing all the shaving cream off and realized how pretty they were underneath. So when the water was running almost clear, I put the socks down into my washing machine and washed them using a hot water cycle and a little bit of Dharma's Professional Textile Detergent. So this is the first pair of socks that I did, where I didn't dilute down the shaving cream at all, and I used the more pastel colors. And I think they turned out good. I think they're really pretty, and I like all the colors together. But if you'll notice, I have quite a bit of white left on these socks. Not that that's a bad thing, but you'll see when you look at the other socks, there's a lot more left on these socks. And the reason for that is because the dye just kind of sat on the top. It couldn't go down into the shaving cream at all because the shaving cream was so thick. Now let's compare it to the second pair of socks that I did, where I thinned out the shaving cream a little bit with some warm water. There's more of a swirl design on these socks. The other socks, it was just more like a spotty design. It wasn't quite as swirled because it was just thicker. These, you can see more of the swirls. The different colors kind of blend together a little bit, and there's less white left on the socks. I really like these too. I love the teal green and the teal blue mixed together, along with the other green colors that I put on this pair of socks. I think they look really pretty. Okay, so now for the third pair of socks. Remember, these longer socks have just a little bit less cotton in them, like 4% less, so it's a minimal difference. But I think these turned out really cool. I was really happy with these. The colors did blend together some, and with these, remember, I used blues and I used turkey red. And of course, all of these are new colors to me. The blueberry from Pro Chemical is not, and the bluebird is not, but I didn't have color swatches, so I just went ahead and made those right now. But I've never used this turkey red before, so didn't really know what to expect. I really like these though. I think they look really pretty. The colors are a little muddy in places, but not bad. I think they still look really nice. Honestly, I don't know so much that it's the colors are muddy, as they're not just quite as vibrant as they would be if the socks were 100% cotton. If you hold any of these socks up really close or you zoom in on them, you're going to see that there are little white flecks. That is the polyester and the elastic or spandex in the socks. Those things won't dye, so you'll see those little white flecks in the socks. Okay, so here's the last pair with the bubblegum, key lime, and bluebird. I've used bubblegum before too. I somehow didn't seem to have a color swatch for that one either. And I think these are really cool too. Like I said, the colors do blend some, but they don't blend the same way they would if you were putting them just as a liquid on a pair of socks or on a t-shirt. I've gone ahead and combined all the socks on one slide so that you could see them all together. I really like this technique. This is a lot of fun, and it's a great way to use up some extra dye and just do something a little different. If you guys have enjoyed watching me experiment and kind of learn this new technique, I sure would appreciate it if you would like the video and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thank you all for watching, and I hope you have a great day.